Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to the Caring Economy with me, Toby Usnik. Today, I'm really happy to have as our guest my friend and colleague for many years now, Emily Rafferty, who, among many things, is the president emerita for the Metropolitan Museum in New York. She is a senior advisor at Russell Reynolds, the international executive search firm, and she's even a special advisor to UNESCO, the cultural organization of the UN. So welcome to the Caring Economy, Emily Rafferty.
Thank you, Toby. I look forward to talking with you.
So Emily, we always like to ask our guests on the Caring Economy about their own career journey, sort of starting with maybe where you're born, where you went to school, but then more significantly, how your career took off, and maybe even more practically speaking, where you went left while others were going right, or where you had to pick yourself up by the bootstraps and make something new out of something that wasn't so great. So tell us a little bit about Emily Rafferty's career journey, please.
Sure. I grew up in New York City, very sort of tame, normal life of a young girl with 6 siblings. We all went to school here in New York, where I live now. And I'd say my roots of activity have always been in some form of volunteerism. So I was headed to the nonprofit sector very early in life through places like Head Start, joining organizations that were food banks and things like that. So life went on through high school and college. In college, I wound up initially at a junior college, and I was a bit lost about what to focus on. And I noted that it had a full curriculum offered by a very, very able and accomplished woman on world religions. And so I took all of those courses, and there's no doubt that they informed the directions that I took. I learned first and foremost that other than the secularism of the United States, or still pretty secularism of the United States, that beyond that, and certainly beyond the Western world of Europe, everybody's life is very intertwined with their religious beliefs. And so to understand a culture, you had to go to those roots, which I did, and I'm quite sure was the guiding force to my ending up a career at the Metropolitan Museum of Art for 40 years. Prior to the Met, I worked in a number of nonprofit institutions. My first job was working for David Rockefeller Jr., who was at the time at the Boston Symphony, and I worked on his non-symphony activities, which included a lot of nonprofit work in the organizations that he was involved in, running youth programs up in Massachusetts at Tanglewood, the summer home of the Boston Symphony. And all of this was due to one giant turn one way and then flip to another. I was off to Vista, the equivalent of the Peace Corps, and I met David through the woman who was working for him at a concert one night in Boston, literally 2 weeks before I was going to leave for Vista. And he was persuasive in the work that he was doing, running the governor's task force for arts and education in the state of Massachusetts, always having been interested in arts and education and involved in it from the start, and also as a volunteer at Head Start for many years. I decided to do it, to give the summer a try, and really the rest became history. I worked with David on a number of nonprofit projects and ultimately moved back to New York and wound up at the Met as a young woman, really, in the development area. Found a career in development, which people cringe away from. It's asking for money, what an odious thing to do. In fact, it's a very easy thing to do if you have a passion about the institution and you have a knowledge about it and believe in its mission. I actually think it's one of the easiest and most rewarding things that one can do, is to see things come to life with the support of people who are beginning to get joy from seeing it happen. Those are these kind of in a capsule, the very early days, and I can go on from there unless you want to go into a specific question.
Sure. So Emily, you ended up at your undergraduate at Boston University. So physically you were in Boston. Is that coincidentally also how you ran into David at that pivotal moment?
He was actually working at the Boston Symphony at the time, and
Hmm.
he was in a singing group, an a cappella singing group called the um, Cantata Singers. That was it.
Yes.
And anyway, so I met him through a friend who worked at the Boston Symphony, and that's how I got there. But yes, I was living in Boston, and anyway, I stayed another 4 years or so,
Hmm.
working most of the time with David and then with his friend Drew Hyde over at the Institute of Contemporary Art, running
Got
their
it.
experimental educational program in city high schools. So again, more that was a paid job. That was not a volunteer job, but
Sure.
certainly a lot of opportunity to learn and just sweep up knowledge at a time when one is active that way and one's brain is kind of all over the place and uh, um, searching for new things and antenna
Hmm.
on all fronts. So I was very fortunate to do that.
Yeah,
And
I write in the Caring Economy about purpose-driven careers, and it sounds like yours has been purpose-driven. That sense of service for which you've been recognized in your whole career. I know you've got so many accolades, from honorary doctorates to lists in Crane's 100 most influential women. Um, the service piece, though, it sounds like from what you've shared, it started early, like when you were a child growing up here in
it
Manhattan.
really did. Yeah, it really did. And some people want to be a leader. Some people don't want to be a leader. Some people take courses to learn to be a leader. And there are many, many things in this world that I am not. But one of the things I am is a natural leader. It just comes to me naturally. I don't do anything to ask it to be there. It simply is the way I respond to situations would be to initiate conversations, or
Mhm.
in a bind where I'm in a physical place that people can't get out of or whatever, that I will take the leadership. And that's not something I'm necessarily proud of, but it is something that one has a responsibility for when you understand that you do have that gift,
Yes.
to use it. You have a choice if you have that gift. You can choose it for positive action, or you can choose it for negative action, or you can choose it for no action. I think
Yes.
the positive is the only responsible way to go. So I have um, been involved in the Met, as I say, through 40 years of fundraising, running fundraising, external affairs, and then running the Met for 10 years. But all the way along, I was mindful of the opportunities that I should take for leadership, joining other boards, for instance, chairing other boards, even when my children were in school, and chairing their boards, and then moving on from their schools to other places, some of which that you mentioned, the New York Federal Reserve Bank, where I chaired the regional New York branch for 4 out of the 6 years that I was on that board. A,
Hmm.
a real gift to be able to serve that way. And I think in other aspects of one's life, um, you need to demonstrate a call to action. It's one thing to say that you believe in social responsibility. It's another
Hmm.
thing to have people notice that you do it, and you don't do it because you want to be recognized. But again, it just something that becomes natural to me and something that I enjoy.
Hmm.
So the Met had 1,400 volunteers, enormously talented group. 500 of them were docents. Without them, we couldn't have opened the doors in the morning for the museum. We would not have as nearly a rich educational program without them. And so supporting them and making sure they had what they need, and through the opportunities that I had in leadership, is an example of how I think that you can keep an organization going without having it report
Hmm.
to me every day, but just to to be involved in it and to be
Yes.
visibly active, which I think you point out, in your book, is getting up out of your seat and
Hmm.
walking around and seeing where things are and where things could be better, or without being bothersome. The
Yes.
thing is to be bothersome, and one can observe without taking action right away. I think that
Hmm.
actually that's the better way to go. I learned at one point along the way that listening was really important,
Mhm.
and that listening was actually essential. You could go down the wrong track very easily. They think
Mhm.
you're a know-it-all, and you're not. You've got to listen
Mhm.
and
Yep.
see what the path and the journey is. And sometimes it isn't what you expect it to be.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, again, today on the Caring Economy, we have Emily Rafferty, who is a president emerita at the Metropolitan Museum in New York, which she ran for 10 years. After a 40-year career there, she's a special advisor at the UN's cultural organization, UNESCO, and a senior advisor at Russell Reynolds, the international search firm. Stick with us after this break. Emily Rafferty, welcome back to the Caring Economy. I wanted to ask you about that whole sense of leadership, and in particular, as we enter Women's History Month, what advice do you give to young girls and women who are contemplating a career such as yours right now? I take on that leadership can be somewhat nurtured and somewhat of nature, but how does a young aspiring professional, we'll say female in this case, how does she chart out her career, or what advice do you give to her to test some things or to take some steps forward?
I do a lot of mentoring for mostly young women now that are coming out of college. And I talk to them about their interests and try to dig deep so that creating the strongest and the most diverse platform for them as they approach what they're doing and the kind of people they are. For some people, it very naturally appears to me that they should follow their instincts and try to secure a fellowship for 1 or 2 years somewhere if they can afford to do it or if they can get it funded. And then usually they are the individuals that will want to go more directly into graduate school because they have a clear mission of what they want to do. In the arts in particular, for instance, that would be true if they wanted to go into the curatorial ranks. That involves that education, a continuing education. If it's more of a situation where a person knows that they want to be in the nonprofit sector, let's say, or has particular instincts in animal rights issues or whatever it is, I try to help them build a resume and a CV right away because it's going to be the first encounter they're usually going to
Mm-hmm.
have, unless they get lucky in meeting people. And in
Mm-hmm.
that CV, I really try to make them as broad-based a person as they can possibly be,
Mm-hmm.
but with attention to the particulars of what they have done, and
Mm-hmm.
try to embrace all that they have done, because sometimes they miss it. I'm working with a really brilliant young woman now, and I went through her resume and I said, you've had a lot of international travel. You haven't come from, parents that have taken you places. You've got to get that in here because global experience right now is everything. And so
Yes.
you speak these languages, let's get it in here. And that's an example of an oversight that she just didn't think about.
Yeah.
So it's different in every way, but
Mm-hmm.
I think setting expectations is probably the most important thing that I would try to do with a young person looking. There is, in the world of the technologies that we can embrace and that we have access to, there is a sense of speed. There's a sense of alacrity that one can go into an institution and very quickly rise the ranks. And sometimes time has to be encountered.
Absolutely. Yes.
And
You can't age
have
a
to
fine wine
understand.
overnight.
And if you become pushy, and if you become uh, too uh, enamored of yourself and where you should be within the institution, you probably won't get there very far.
Yep.
People are looking for individuals who come in, they have a job, but they see what needs to be done. And they see also what people around them might need. I mean, using that sixth sense and engaging with people. I understand through the pandemic, it's been almost impossible to do. But when things break open, and even in Zoom, you begin to see it happen. Your job is not only about yourself and what you're doing. It's about the people who are around you as well. And many of them need conversation. They're very insecure, perhaps, or maybe you're very insecure, perhaps. And we all go through those moments. So look for places where you think you might be able to have a cup of coffee or engage in something that's going on. Follow the teamwork, where there's um, a chance to be a member of a team and to be expose your leadership qualities in that, not in an abrasive way, but in a contemplative, in a articulate way of what you can bring to the situation.
Yes.
Don't take everything. Take what you can do well and
Yeah.
do it well. And those are the kinds of things I think that will move you forward. People notice that. I
Yes.
look at a resume, having talked about it a minute ago. Somebody's been out of college for 5 years. I'll look at a resume, and by that time, I don't really care where they went to school, and I certainly don't care what their grades were. I really care how their attitude has developed
Mhm.
and what they want to do in the direction they want to take, and if they've identified any mission for themselves. Now, for women, there's huge opportunities out there right now. I've just worked on a congressional women's committee for 8 years. Of 8 women, there were 8 of us, 4 from each party, and on the feasibility of an American history museum to be
Mhm.
women's history
Mhm.
museum to be part of the Smithsonian. And I thought I would never live to see the day. We submitted our study to Congress 2.5 years ago. The whole thing was just voted in by Congress and the Senate this December. So, and to be a part of the Smithsonian. So that's going to be a huge thing for women all over this country who are interested in women's history.
Absolutely.
And there's a huge field of women's history out there. It hasn't been told. And so there's opportunities in the universities, in the think tanks, in the organizations around women that have grown up.
Yep.
And so for people who are interested in women's activities, what they've done at the New York Historical Society here in New York, a whole women's floor dedicated to women's history. It is finally being looked at and recognized as a
Yes.
field that has not been sufficiently studied.
Yep.
That's just one example of many, many that women can do. If they don't want
Yes.
to do something women oriented, then fine. They can do whatever they choose to do. I see many women going into the field of veterinary studies right now, more than ever, for whatever reason. And I think it's love of animals and also love of medicine. I mean, so there are these combinations of things that one can find that allow you to
Yep.
dedicate yourself mission wide.
Yep. So thank you for that, Emily. Ladies and gentlemen, again, today we have Emily Rafferty on the Caring Economy. Emily, I want to ask you a little bit about the recovery from COVID-19. You've been for many years a trustee, a board member, and chair of the NYC & Co., which is New York City's Visitors and Convention Bureau equivalent, basically. How are you all helping New York come through the COVID pandemic? What are some of the signs of hope that we should get, hopefully?
Well, it used to be the Visitors Bureau and so forth. It was under the Bloomberg administration. It was framed into NYC and Company, which now oversees all of the tourism and marketing activities for the city of New York. So it embraces this whole package of tourism, which is all of the industries that live in New York and attract the tourists. And it also embraces the go-to places that move beyond the Statue of Liberty and the museums to all of the industries, such as the restaurants and those that benefit from tourism. So you have to look at the whole picture. And what are we looking at? The first thing that happened was that Fred Dixon, who was the CEO of NYC & Company, put together a citywide coalition that included members from all of these industries. It meets regularly. It has task force that has planned comebacks. Initially, it was all about visiting the boroughs in New York City because we were very aware we would not be getting visitors from other states and other countries. That is beginning to loosen up. Museums are open. Restaurants, finally. It's been a very, very tough walk, a tough
Mm-hmm.
walk. But I do see with the vaccines, with the availability of the vaccines, as frustrating as it has been to get a shot in the arm, it is happening. And when the social distancing can finally abate to some extent, we'll see more activities in our social, in our cultural and our nonprofit institutions. By the fall, I think we'll see the opening of Broadway, and later as the season unfolds, we'll see the those places like concert halls and auditorium and those places that can't accommodate many people. But I think this summer we will see the fruits of our efforts in
Agreed.
blowout of community programs. Henry Timms at Lincoln Center is opening up all of the plazas for all kinds of Lincoln Center activities, plus all other activities. I think it will be the idea of the agora, the Greek equivalent, and I think you're seeing all of these kinds of city activities in this one place, and that will be the hub from which we will see this happen in the 5 boroughs. So it is a process. Outdoor dining will happen again. What needs to happen, and it's going to take time, is the comfort factor. That is what is, in my opinion, really holding up the reopening. People comfortable coming into the broader city. And what we're going to see, I think, is the hybrid of offices that people will come and they'll go, they'll work at home, they'll work in their offices, they'll work around the city. I mean, it will take a while and it may never come back to full-time in the office. It certainly will come to different office structures, different office arrangements, different travel. Very important to the comeback of New York. And we're also fortunately seeing the culmination of the renovations of JFK and of LaGuardia and Newark coming along down the line. So our airports are going to be world class before too long. And people are already beginning to take comfort in the vaccine by flying. We will likely not to see the full comeback of international tourism until out there in 2024. Between now and then, we'll see the gradual comeback of the domestic, of some international. So it's happening. I see the rollout. I'm an optimist. I'm a believer in New York. I work with lots of these boards who are at Carnegie Hall, the 9/11 Memorial, who are Metropolitan Museum of Art. You name them all out there. They are working to their best way, and with less money than they had, less money that they're going to have for a long time, and yet they are keeping the city thriving, and they're doing their best to open us up.
Good for all of us. Yes, you've heard it directly from one of our greatest cultural citizens, Emily Rafferty. Ladies and gentlemen, I also, Emily, I love the fact that Moynihan Station is now opened. It's trains, not planes, but it's gorgeous.
Moyer's clock out there, and the work of Tom Wright and the regional planning people. And it is, I had a view of it when it was being built, a tour of it. And when you come to New York, come through Penn Station. And
here.
Glory of what New York can and will revive.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Emily Rafferty for joining us today here on The Caring Economy. Emily, I'm going to give you the last word. Any final thoughts on leadership, the roles of businesses in community, or mentoring young people? The floor is yours.
Well, as a leader, I would say to everybody, look around and see what needs to be done and find the right person to do it. It may not be you, but you can have a role in making sure that it does get done.
Thank you so much, Emily Rafferty, for joining us today on The Caring Economy. Everyone have a great day.